Deliberately targeting children. The government accuses the entertainment industry. Gore makes it an issue. Bush cries foul. The Wen-Ho Lee plea deal. A major embarrassment for U.S. prosecutors. Europeans say enough to sky-high fuel prices, but world prices rise still higher. And Indiana coach Bob Knight has his backers.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. A new U.S. government study out today accuses the entertainment industry of aggressively marketing material featuring sex and violence to America's children. The issue has quickly become part of the presidential campaign. This study, commissioned after the Columbine High School massacre, says 80% of R-rated movies are marketed to children under 17. It was 70% for restricted video games, 27% for music with what are called euphemistically explicit lyrics. The study also found ads draw underage television viewers to Xena, Warrior Princess, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and South Park. Both Al Gore and George Bush reacted to the study today. Correspondent John Roberts has the details and the context.
It's only fantasy, but according to the FTC, the way violence is marketed to children is all too real.
Many companies in these entertainment sectors routinely market their materials to an underage audience regardless of the ratings.
The industry has denied targeting young people. Under withering fire from the FTC, however, it admits there are problems with keeping violent content away from kids.
In some areas, clearly, we need to do better, and the FTC report has highlighted some of those areas, and we're committed to doing better. But government regulation, that's not the answer.
I call on these industries for an immediate ceasefire.
But regulation is exactly what Al Gore proposed on the campaign trail in Illinois today. He warned that if he were president, the industry would have 6 months to clean up its act, or else.
We have a problem in our society with too much violence being aimed at young children. It's not right, it's not good, and it has to be stopped.
The report's release just happened to be timed with Gore's appearance on Oprah, the perfect forum for an issue of interest to moms across the country.
Well, it's not about censorship, it's about citizenship.
The Bush campaign today ridiculed the vice president's sudden concern and reminded voters that Gore has taken plenty of money from the very industry he seeks to attack.
Morning, everybody.
That, says the Texas governor, leaves a credibility gap.
I think they've received about $13 million of campaign funding, and as I recall, there was a report last year that came out where he had an opportunity to stand up and take the same position but chose not to.
In Hollywood and Washington, no one really expects that there will be new laws to govern content. Just the pressure may be enough to lead industry to act. But with millions of concerned parents on the line, both candidates know this is a hot-button issue they can take into November. Dan?
John Roberts in Illinois. On another front, Bush today road-tested his latest image and message makeover in a state that was supposed to be a big sure thing for him, but where Al Gore now at least appears to be highly competitive. It's Florida, where Bush's younger brother Jeb is governor. CBS's Bill Whitaker is there.
At a critical time, George W. Bush came to a critical state where he once was far ahead and where he desperately needs the elderly vote to win.
The government has a solemn obligation to help our seniors.
Pushing his prescription drug plan and knocking Al Gore's to seniors in Clearwater.
We need to have a variety of plans available for seniors from which to tailor-make your own to meet your needs. That's what this government needs to do. As opposed to having a failed HMO called the federal government try to continue to manage your program for you.
The new Bush slogan is real plans for real people, but it could be less is more. Bush strategists calculate he can win a close national election by narrowly targeting swing voters like the elderly and middle-class women in a few swing states like Florida, Washington, and a group across the old industrial heartland.
The problem with a swing vote strategy is that they can and do swing both ways. This state, Florida, is now up for grabs when just 2 months ago it was solidly behind George W. Bush.
And national polls show them swinging toward Al Gore. So Bush will spend the next 2 months fighting to pull them back, hoping his education and tax plans will appeal to struggling middle-class women.
I like his policy, what he's planning to do about education.
I don't particularly want to vote for either of them, but I will not vote for Bush.
He's targeting younger working men with his private Social Security accounts.
What would it take for him to convince you totally to come to him?
I think we need to push the debate in, and we need to get the foreign policy issues on the table.
The Bush folks are convinced it's a winning strategy, and so is the Gore campaign, which is targeting the same swing voters in the same key states. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Clearwater, Florida.
In a high-profile legal case with political implications, the government tonight reversed course and dropped virtually its whole case against fired Los Alamos scientist Wen-Ho Lee. He was the only person ever charged with anything after an investigation into the possible leak of U.S. nuclear weapons secrets to China. CBS's Jim Stewart has late details. Jim?
Dan, it was only a few days ago that government lawyers argued Wen-Ho Lee was such a danger to the United States he couldn't even be trusted under house arrest with a monitor strapped to his ankle. Now Lee is working to strike a deal that could make him a free man, and there's no longer even a suggestion that he's spied for China. The former Los Alamos Laboratory nuclear weapons scientist is expected to plead guilty to one count of improperly downloading the equivalent of 400,000 pages of weapons data into his personal computer, but will not face additional jail time or pay a fine. In return, he will assist FBI agents in determining what happened to the classified data, which he says he destroyed. Lee came under suspicion when FBI agents first began to believe 5 years ago that someone had handed China secrets about the W-88, America's most sophisticated warhead. But because investigators focus solely on Lee, some national security experts now say we may never know the truth.
There has been spying. Where it has occurred within the national laboratories and who has been doing it is not known and may never be known because of the manner in which this case was handled.
We're told that a last-minute snag has delayed approval of the plea bargain, but that both sides are trying to work through it. As for the missing nuclear secrets, investigators think they already know the answer to that. Lee took them, they think, to pad his resume when he went job hunting after retirement. Dan?
Jim Stewart. On the CBS Weather Watch, Tropical Storm Florence formed up today far out in the Atlantic, about 380 miles south-southeast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Top sustained winds about 60 miles an hour. Best guesses are it will not pose any threat to the continental United States at least through Thursday. Up next here on the CBS Evening News, Ford and Firestone playing the blame game. And later, two very different houses, same price. Why? Stay tuned. The CBS Price Watch shows OPEC today confirmed it is boosting oil production by 3%, not nearly enough, analysts say, to bring prices down. The overall worldwide price of oil soared $1.50 today to $35 a barrel, and the U.S. Energy Department reported today that American gasoline prices at service stations rose another 3 cents over the past week to a nationwide average now of $1.56 a gallon. That would be considered a bargain, though, in Europe, as CBS's Tom Fenton reports.
In parts of Britain today, go-slow protests by truckers and farmers created nightmare congestion, but most drivers weren't complaining.
I've got a lot of sympathy with what's happening.
When taxi drivers tied up Liverpool at the evening rush hour, they were actually applauded. And most of the motoring public seems to approve, as a blockade of refineries left hundreds of gas stations dry today. By tomorrow, it will be thousands.
Enough is enough, really. The buck's got to stop somewhere.
It's $5 a gallon gasoline he's talking about. Europeans have finally decided that they're paying too much for gasoline, not because of greedy OPEC barons, but because of greedy governments that have made gasoline a major source of revenue. 3/4 of the price of the gas at these pumps is tax. But it's here in Britain that the protests are the most surprising.
We're so un-British. Stiff upper lip, oh boy, we don't do such things. But I'm afraid we do such things.
Farmer Brindley Williams and thousands of other ordinary people are trying to force the government to roll back some of the heavy taxes on fuel. They got no sympathy today from Prime Minister Tony Blair.
We cannot, and we will not, alter government policy on petrol through blockades and pickets.
So far, this has been a peaceful protest, but the real test is yet to come.
Because it's only a matter of time now, gentlemen, that the police are going to be forced to come down heavy on us.
Tom Fenton, CBS News, Ellesmere Port, England.
General Motors is recalling more than 250,000 Buicks and Oldsmobiles because of a potentially dangerous airbag defect. The recall involves the 1995 Regal and the 1995 and 96 Cutlass Supreme. The driver's side airbag may deploy without warning. GM says it's happened more than 100 times, causing about 60 injuries, but GM says no deaths. Firestone and Ford are slowly replacing the more than 6 million tires involved in their huge safety recall, and they are quickly pointing the finger of blame at each other now for the fatal accidents possibly linked to the tires. CBS's Bob Orr has new information on the Firestone tire investigation.
The rift between Bridgestone, Firestone, and Ford is growing. In Tokyo today, Bridgestone President Yoichiro Kaisaki defended his company, saying fatal rollover accidents involving Ford Explorers with Firestone tires were not caused by tire defects. Instead, Kaisaki seemed to blame Ford when he was quoted saying there were a lot of accidents on Fords, and the accident rate for other cars is dramatically lower. But safety data reviewed by CBS News does not support the suggestion that Ford SUVs are more prone to rollovers than other sport utility vehicles. It is true that two-door Ford Explorers have a high rollover fatality rate, more than twice that of comparable mid-sized cars. But the larger four-door Explorers have one of the lowest rollover fatality rates among all SUVs.
This is a Firestone tire issue, not a vehicle issue.
Ford CEO Jack Nasser told Congress Explorers fitted with Goodyear tires have experienced no tire failures.
There are almost 3 million Goodyear tires on Ford Explorers that have not had, as far as we know, one tread separation problem.
At the same time, new confidential documents obtained by CBS News reveal that Firestone knew last year its tire problem was getting much worse. Firestone's records showed tread separations involving the Wilderness AT model jumped 194% between 1998 and 1999.
More damaging documents will likely surface tomorrow when Ford and Firestone are dragged back to Capitol Hill for a second round of hearings. What started as a united front has now deteriorated into a high-stakes version of every man for himself. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
Just ahead here on CBS, Indiana fires Hall of Fame basketball coach Bob Knight, but a lot of people in Indiana don't like it. On the CBS Health Watch, a University of Massachusetts study finds it may take only a few cigarettes to get teenagers hooked. In this study, 63% had one or more symptoms of addiction long before they became daily smokers. This study suggests the younger the smoker, the higher the risk of getting hooked early on. Fired Bob Knight, the coach in Indiana, isn't the only one leaving Indiana University's basketball team. Starting guard Dane Fife said today he's going too because he said there's no reason to stay. Others may leave as well. The uproar over Coach Knight's firing shows many Hoosiers still have zero tolerance for the coach's critics. CBS's Jim Axelrod has more about this.
Protests on American college campuses are nothing new.
Let's go, move!
But the burning issue at Indiana University, the one worth getting arrested for, they fired the basketball coach.
And I notified him that he was being removed as basketball coach, effective immediately.
I've had about all the dumb questions I need for tonight.
Bob Knight is one of those figures who divides people neatly in two. One fan's chair-throwing, player-choking bully is another's hard-charging, passionate winner.
Indiana wins the championship.
The reason it took the university so long for this to happen is 763 victories, 2 national championships, and 5 Final Fours.
Which is why the incident that finally did him in, when Bob Knight grabbed this student by the arm after the teenager called the coach by his last name only,
He scared the hell out of me.
is so fitting. It's either the last outburst of a man who lost it a long time ago, or Knight is the last man demanding old-fashioned respect in a society that could use some.
When somebody calls me by my first name, that's a kid, and I always tell them, so that, you know, I'm not on a first name basis with you. My name's Coach Knight, or it's Mr. Knight.
At Indiana University tonight, they are marching on the president's home, threatening the freshman caught in the middle, and blaming everyone but Coach Bob Knight.
He has big flaws and great big positives. And so ultimately, I think you have to weigh the whole of the man.
Exactly what they're doing in Indiana tonight. Knight's fans and critics on two sides of the street at the end of the road. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, New York.
Still ahead here on CBS, be it ever so humble, this tiny home costs a small fortune.
In studios or whatever.
An intense search is going on tonight in southern Italy after a weekend flash flood washed away a camp for the disabled. At least 12 people are known dead. As rescue workers try to find missing campers, critics say the Riverside area was an environmental disaster waiting to happen. The local mayor says he tried to close the campground because of the safety risk. The victims died in their sleep Sunday morning as floodwaters carried away cars and trailers and left a thick coat of mud over everything else. Another World Trade Summit has been disrupted by protests. Demonstrators in Melbourne, Australia fought with police, attacked cars, and smashed windows. At least 8 people were injured. The streets were so clogged with protesters that many delegates had to be brought to the forum by boat. And the Olympic torch run has been interrupted yet again. Just outside Sydney, Australia, a man tried to steal the torch last night and throw it in a river before police moved in. The torch finally made it to Sydney today after a sometimes bumpy 3-month journey. On a high-risk journey today on the high frontier, it was high hope on a rope for 2 spacewalkers working 230 miles up in Earth orbit. The 2 were near the end of their tether, 110 feet from Space Shuttle Atlantis, to lay cable and install gear on the International Space Station. It will take several years to furnish and finish the station. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, the real state of real estate.
The CBS Evening News and tonight's Eye on America segment are sponsored by Aflac. Without it, no insurance is complete.
We ask you now to consider the dollar. Legal tender in all 50 states, looks the same in Maine and Hawaii, and it has the same value. Or does it? As CBS's Jeffrey Kaufman reports in tonight's Eye on America, what you can buy with a dollar depends a lot on where you spend it.
A snug little starter, a suburban dream, a classic gem loaded with character. All are selling for about the same price. So what's the difference? Location, location, location.
According to the National Association of Realtors, the median price for a home in this country is $137,000, meaning half the homes in America sell for less than that, half for more. So just where are those homes and what do you get for that kind of money?
Well, if you're looking to live amidst the glitz of Manhattan, don't expect a life of glamour.
How high are we going? We're going to the 5th floor.
They call this a walk-up, a long walk-up. All 440 square feet of it.
You can't quite touch both walls, that's right.
But it's not much bigger than a hotel room.
Cute as a button.
That may be a panic button. As cities like New York run out of space, it's homebuyers who get squeezed. The average price of a 2-bedroom apartment here is over $900,000.
All of the easily developable land has been consumed.
Especially in the older established cities of the Northeast and the West Coast, says urban planner Jim Hughes, where the so-called high-tech economy is soaring. But Hughes says inexpensive homes can be found.
Well, you have them in areas that are not in high demand, where the economy is generally weak.
Like Moroville, Louisiana, where you can live like a king. Your castle, a 4,200 square foot charmer with leaded glass, stunning woodwork. Yours for only $124,500. But Moroville is a long way from just about everywhere. Good jobs are scarce. But it is possible to find a well-paying job and an affordable home. You just have to look to the new urban South, cities like Atlanta and Dallas, where there's economic growth and room for cities to grow.
Isn't it nice? Very nice.
For even less money than that tiny New York walk-up, you can get a 4-bedroom,
Spa and gazebo.
2-bath,
Now that's a closet.
dream home. For Carla Mitchell, house hunting in Dallas is like winning the lottery.
Something comparable in Chicago would run at least $50,000 to $75,000 more.
Whether it's Morrowville or Manhattan, whether it's 90,000 or 900,000, there's nothing more valuable than the place called home. For Eye on America, I'm Jeffrey Kaufman in New York.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather reporting for the CBS Evening News. Thanks for choosing CBS News. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
Why you're having trouble finding replacement tires tomorrow. Experience CBS News.